Welcome to the channel. I'm excited to talk with Mr. Stephen Prince tonight. He sent me some great preview copies of his comic series Monster Matador. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and that way we can talk a little bit about Monster Matador.
Sure. My name is Steve Prince, and I'm the creator and writer of Monster Matador. I write comics. I used to work in the toy industry where I developed toy lines and for retail and into animation. So a little bit about
Awesome. So it sounds like you're a pretty creative individual in general.
Yeah, I try. It's when you get into the professional world, it's a tough thing to break into. And I actually got lucky with the toy job because I had started there as a project manager, and I kind of weaseled my way into the creative side of it. So that was kind of nice. But sometimes you kind of have to go in the back, the back door rather.
Yeah.
The front door.
So what do you do with toys? What is your job there?
I don't do it anymore, but I used to one of our big brands was called Puppy in My Pocket. So we would just develop the toy lines for each season and for international customers, and I created and developed a line called Power Bugs, which we also developed into an animated series. And then literally the day I had approved all the scripts for the first season and we were going into production, we kind of went out of business.
Wow, that's awesome timing.
Yeah, that's great timing. So I was like, well, why don't I go back to trying to do the comic thing? And so I started making comics, and here I am,
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because toys are so connected to this world as well, So that's probably interesting knowledge to have,
Yeah, definitely. It gives you a sense of a big picture, but also how kind of because I worked not just on the creative side, but also on kind of the business side. I also kind of understood how an executive views the stuff as opposed to creative, because for us, for creatives, you're generally like, this is my great idea and whatever, whereas executive more like, okay, well, how am I going to sell this into here? And
it becomes a numbers game.
Becomes a numbers game. You're also dealing with retail buyers and what they want, what the retail wants. There's always been, well, at least in the past, controversy that there weren't enough female action figures. And the reality of that was that it wasn't necessarily the toy companies. It was a lot of times, the retail, the buyers also didn't believe that those figures would sell, so they wouldn't even buy them from the toy companies, so the toy companies wouldn't bother making them.
Yeah, I've always seen that as sort of a chicken and egg sort of situation.
And that's,
there's always been complaints about the lack of female representation in pop culture, but then you also look at, well, they don't really sell that well either. But do they not sell that well because we've never kind of garnered that spirit in the females as much as we did in the male?
No, that's true.
Ninja Turtles are really cool, so little boys like them. That's hard to sell to girls the same.
Yeah, it definitely, I think it definitely was a kind of a chicken and egg thing, and then whatever, the past few years, obviously that's changed, but it was definitely, there was no vast conspiracy or something, but it's
the way our social structure, I guess our culture has developed, Yeah, and then I also hear Seth MacFarlane, he was talking about making Spawn toys and stuff, and he was saying it's a big deal with the retail. That's where the whole process really gets difficult, because if he made a giant statue that looked really awesome and you wanted to buy it, he can sell it to you directly, but that doesn't scale. And retailers don't want that size of a box on their shelf because they
Exactly.
only have so much space.
Yeah, their shelves are only so high, and just because you're Tyler Farmer or whatever, you only get the space that you get. Just because you have like a big line of things, they might only give you 2 pegs, 2 slots. So you have to everything. You know what I mean? It's kind
like
of
your whole packaging and everything has to fit in a certain size space and
right.
stuff.
So you want to maximize what you can actually get into that space, because if you can only fit two, if it's the difference between fitting 2 statues or 50 figures, right? You're going to fit 50 figures because
Yeah.
you're going to make more money off it. But
yeah, it's crazy how this whole business works, but
yeah,
collecting is very popular right now.
very popular. It's gotten crazy.
So tell me about getting it back into comics and getting into
Yeah.
comics and trying to break into comics, and how hard that was moving from the other side over there.
It's the nice thing about comics is that anyone can do it, and comics has a history of self-published creators. I think I lost you. And doing big titles, you have things like Ninja Turtles and obviously Image and things like that. Whereas in other industries, it's kind of looked down upon. So the nice thing about comics is that there's really no barrier to entry. When I lost when I lost a toy job, I just kind of started writing and drawing comics on my own just for something to do. And I did a comic strip called Unemployant, which is about an unemployed ant, and I wrote and drew it, and the drawing's not that great, but it was around that time I think Comixology had Submit and things like that, and I would just put it on there, and through that I had done another book, and there was a fairly well-known comic store here called Meltdown Comics, and Jim Higgins used to run comic creating classes for writing and drawing and things like that, and I took some of the writing classes, and I met creators there, and a bunch of us were making our own comics. Ryland Grant, who does
Banjax.
Okay, Ryland, and Carla, who you had on the show, we were all in the same club. Tony Fabro, who does 3-Panel Crimes on Instagram. So we were all.
Oh wow, man! I love 3-Panel Crimes. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And Tony's he's brilliant.
I didn't know there was any name behind that though. Now I know who to look for.
Yeah, he doesn't really promote himself. But we were in that class together, and we've all kind of stuck together, and we've all sort of taken our paths, but we all help each other out, and we read each other's scripts, and it kind of just encourages, you kind of feed off each other, and we all ran our first Kickstarters last June at the same time, and Carla just finished one, Ryland just started one, I'm starting one next week, so that part of the nice thing about that little community was that you kind of it gives you motivation to keep going. You start seeing your friends succeed, and everybody's helping each other out and promoting everybody else. So
I imagine it also just gives you like somebody to bounce ideas off of, and not just anybody, but somebody that kind of like understands what you're going through, because you're all working toward a similar goal. So comics seems to breed these types of little collectives like this, where you'll see groups of creators that really like stick together and help each other out. And the other cool thing, you don't really see it so much in a lot of other industries, at least not publicly, but in comics you'll often see like these groups kind of rise. You'll see multiple people, and it's probably like the most true I've ever seen. The old phrase, "rising tide raises all ships."
Right. Yeah. 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 It's I mean, for Monster Matador, Fabio Alves, who drew Banjax, draws Monster Matador, and that just came about because of my friendship with Ryland. And I had my original artist. Our schedule didn't work, and then I had another artist, and that didn't quite work out. And I remember I was talking to Ryland, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I want to get this thing started. I need an artist, and he's like, oh well, Fabio just finished The Jump, and he's about to go start looking for work. So that's how I looked into Fabio, who's he's a fantastic artist. He's brilliant, and so we all help each other out in that way. It's comics is, like a lot of people say, it's a very small industry,
Mm-hmm.
and I wouldn't say everybody knows everybody, but like you said, there are like little groups that kind of Charlie Stickney, who's now the publisher of Scout, David Pepos, who's doing Scout's Honor over at Aftershock.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's a little crew that kind of came out of that meltdown.
Yeah.
That meltdown thing.
Yeah. Well, that's Ryland Grant. He has a podcast, right? The Writer's Block.
Yeah, he does that with David Avalone. Yeah.
Yeah, who also works with Kevin Eastman, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that's just showing you like one of the biggest names in comics. Like it's that's how small the community is. That's how crazy it is.
Yeah, and you're kind of connected to everyone. It's like what is the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? You're probably
exactly
to everyone in comics by about probably even less than 6 degrees, because it is a very
such a small world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Especially with the internet, like we all kind of congregate in the same corners of the internet, so we all kind of pop up together. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So where did the idea for I guess let me give you a chance to explain what Monster Matador is first, in case that sounds confusing, because it's pretty straightforward and I like that. It's really cool.
Yeah, I call it like a delightfully demented post-apocalyptic kaiju throwdown about a matador who fights monsters to make a better world for his daughter. It's a very straightforward concept, If you read the book, there's more to it, but it's whatever I tell people, just what's the book about? You can just pick it up. It's about a guy who fights monsters, matador who fights monsters. And it's influenced by Godzilla, Mad Max. It's got kind of like the tone and the melodrama of like a telenovela, things like the Santo movies. It's kind of like it's got 80s action movies, things like that. There's a whole lot of different things going on in there that all comes together to make.
Yeah, well, I mean, you say like telenovelas, and that was kind of the one element that I was missing. Like, it was there, but I was like, I don't know what this part is. But
right.
Now that you say that, I'm like, yes, the like over dramatic reactions to everything and the real like cheesy framing and stuff. Like, that makes sense now,
Yeah.
But it is like there's like so much great action.
Yeah, you have to balance that, because you don't want it to be too over the top,
Mm-hmm.
But it's like just enough. And it's funny because Fabio will do these panels where he's just like standing there like in the middle of battle, and he just does this panel and the matador's like this, and you're just like, but it looks great, and that's what works, because it doesn't take you out of it. You're not sitting there going like, oh, that's so like cheesy or whatever. It's just like, oh wow, here's this dude just like
Yeah, well, it's very campy, like you can look at it and enjoy it because it's like kind of cheesy and like the perfect way.
Yeah.
So like what inspired Monster Matador? Where did you pull this from?
I've always been attracted to the iconography, like the Matador, and there's not as well known Peter Sellers movie called The Bobo, and he plays Juan Bautista, the greatest singing matador in all of Spain. And I think I had a period where I watched it like over and over again. It's, I love the movie. And I one day I was just kind of sitting down and with my sketchbook, and I was just kind of in my head, I was gonna create a character. I was gonna create something that was gonna be like, a Batman type, Superman type character or whatever. And I just started drawing, and I wound up drawing the Matador with the mustache or whatever, and the name popped into my head, Monster Matador. And I was really into the Three Stooges at the time too. And the original version of Monster Matador was more of it was like a slapstick kind of thing where, the Matador or the monster would like strike, and then he'd slip on a banana peel on the it was like something.
Yeah.
I wasn't really thinking about it seriously as a idea for something. I was just like kind of having fun, and then over time the kind of idea, the name stuck with me because the name was just like Monster Matador, and Matador means killer. It's killer, so it's really like monster killer. Mm-hmm. And then I just started kind of starting to develop the story, and it just kind of grew from there. And I kept the idea of him fighting to make a better world for his daughter, kind of like a metaphor, as kind of like a hook for it. Yeah, I mean, it probably a little bit of lone wolf and cub influence.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, post-apocalyptic movies, stuff like Mad Max. But one of the things with Matador is one of the cool things that we get to do, because it's comics, is that as the series goes on, we'll get to take him around the world,
Yeah.
And, in movies and post-apocalyptic movies, you tend to get just like a very narrow, very small view of the
Mm-hmm.
world, you get like whatever desert setting it's in. So with this, you get to see like, okay, this is what's happening like around the world, and how other people are kind of reacting and fighting these monsters, and the Matador becomes kind of like a symbol and inspiration to others to kind of take up the fight, because he's just out there doing it, with his cape and sword, which is insane, but he does it, he figures it out,
Yeah, I thought it was a really cool concept. Just like, I mean, kind of like you said, the iconography of like the Matador and the monster, like whenever they first meet and stuff, like just the way he looks in that backdrop against, this giant monster and stuff. It does, like, it inspires a lot of, or it takes a lot of inspiration, I guess, from like kaiju stuff, like the way that it looks at scale, and I always like that. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's and I was watching. I only recently I started watching a couple of the Godzilla movies again, and I had forgotten about, especially like the Criterion had just put out the Showa era movies, Mothra and all that stuff. And I forgot how quirky they were, I mean, I saw them years ago when I was a kid, and all I remember really was Godzilla and whatever. But I forgot all the other like really weird, quirky stuff,
Yeah, no doubt. Like that was, I mean, that was all inspired from the dropping of the bomb and stuff. I always wonder what, like what post-war Japan was like during that time, and like how as a country do you deal with something that devastating, and to see like all the Godzilla and monster movies and stuff come out of that is just, it's a real insight into what they were going through as a culture,
Yeah.
It's really cool though that you put it together with the Matador, and you maintain like a lot of the Spanish culture and things like that, and so it's really cool because it definitely feels like a character. Like he has a lot going on. He seems a little lost at the beginning, but he comes together, and he becomes that hero, and so that part was really cool. I thought it was great to see him kind of make that turn.
Yeah. We kind of in the beginning we kind of throw you in right in the middle of everything. Uh, he's like you said, he's kind of carried into the story by this monster and straight into battles. It's kind of like dropping the reader into the story with the Matador.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of like, we kind of work backward a little and kind of set everything up. But I wanted a big like action sequence in the beginning.
Yeah. So. Yeah, you nailed it, man. I guess how much of this world have you fleshed out? Do you kind of know like where these monsters have come from and what this whole world is like already?
Yeah, I've been like, one of the things with it is I've been trying to figure out like, realistically, how am I going to tell like this whole story and whatnot. And what I've settled on is that there are going to be kind of like 3 sort of like trilogies. And that'll tell like the entire story, but then there's room for spin-offs. The Matador story, like I do know like the whole kind of history and where it's going and where the monsters come from and whatever. And the Matador story will touch upon that, but it's not necessarily the focus of it. And then hopefully like we can do like a one-shot or spin-off where we'll kind of explore that. As the stories go on, you'll see a lot more as the world opens up. You'll see a lot more characters introduced, and you'll start to get hints of all these things and where everything is coming from. And then it'll kind of all come together at the end of it. So
yeah. That's awesome. Sounds phenomenal.
Yeah. So for Tango of the Matadors, which is the one that we're on now, it's a 3-issue miniseries, and the 3rd issue is Kickstarter on April 5th. And then what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna shift to, and I hope this works. I hope people like it. But instead of doing issues, we're gonna do little graphic novellas. So like 64 to 80 page, like done in one stories.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll release those like once or twice a year, and there will be, including the 3 issues of Tango of the Matadors, which will count as like one graphic novella. There will be 9 of those in total. One of the challenges with Kickstarter is kind of like the wait between the books.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like also like trying to be realistic about time. It's like, well, if I do like 20 issues, 20 issues can take like 10 years.
Yeah.
Kickstarter, you know what I mean? So it's more to like, well, if I do 9, I could do that in like 5 or 6 years or so, you know what I mean? It's like it's a more realistic goal.
Yeah.
And it winds up being, in the long run, it costs less for the backers, because, and you're getting a full story, and you don't feel like you have to wait like 3, 4, 5 months or whatever. So
yeah, I like that idea, because it does like trying to maintain reading a series. It's already hard enough month to month with like your in-store stuff. Mm-hmm. Like it is so hard for me sometimes. I'll pick up a book and I'm like, I've read 12 of these before this, and like it still is like, man, what happened in the last issue?
Right.
And so you look at Kickstarter, and a lot of these creators that are doing series are doing like 3 to 4 of them a year, which is like totally commendable. But as a reader, it's just so hard to keep up with what's going on that ultimately you're probably waiting until you get the whole thing and then reading it all at once anyway.
Yeah. And what I found with Kickstarter is people tend to not forget about them, but because they're just coming in the mail at a random time, you're not necessarily like reading them when you get them. They kind of go in a pile or whatever. So sometimes like the wait is longer, or you're just waiting till you get all of them.
I can tell you like the shorter downtime actually becomes a problem, right? So like these people that are doing they're doing like one every 2 months or something. The problem there becomes kind of the same you're talking about. It takes about a month to get the book, and then it just like goes into a pile. And so then they start their next campaign, and I'll get an alert about it, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to buy the second one because I
Right,
haven't
yeah,
read the first one yet.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. And that's the other kind of challenge I've been having is like, like you said, like the second campaign we did, I think 4 months after, and I think that kind of hurt us a little because I think that people had gotten the books. We shipped right away because my goal is to always have the book done before I do a Kickstarter, because I never want to bring the bad news of like, oh no, we're going to be delayed for 6 months. It happens, and it's not
Yeah.
always, it's not always in the creator's control, but we've been fortunate that we've been able to have the books done prior to the Kickstarters. But what I've noticed was that even though the response to number one was great, a lot of the people didn't get to reading number one until after our campaign for issue number two. And like you said, they see number two and they're like, well, wait a minute, I haven't checked it out yet, so I'm just going to wait until.
Mm-hmm.
So I figure, if you could do like a full story and then wait 9 months or a year or whatever, at least like the person has read it and like they're ready for the next one. And you've got like, you've actually got the whole story, and you're not waiting for too long for off a cliffhanger or whatever.
Yeah. The other thing I wonder, like, I don't know if you have enough, I guess, like backlog to inspire that kind of confidence. But one thing that really interests me is if somebody would do like, like it's a 5-issue story and you can back the whole thing up front and we'll send it to you like as each issue gets done, almost kind of like a subscription model, but not quite,
That's what Boom did with Berserker, but they're like a bigger,
Yeah.
I can tell you, for me, like the logistics of that are really difficult because, also the upfront, people are going to be like, I think Boom, the minimum tier was $50. People are going to be more willing to invest $50, $60, $70
Yeah, that's
in
true.
Keanu, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that, it's not to say
Mm-hmm.
anything good or bad. It's just, just consumer behavior. It's gonna be a lot harder
Yeah.
to get someone to back an indie book,
At a substantial enough price.
and also, you pretty much know Boom is gonna get the book out. And again, like I say, the chicken and egg of that is budget wise, it's a little more trickier to manage.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it can get. It's a great idea. I'd love to see it to move to that some sort of model.
Yeah. Like I haven't seen anybody try that. That's like the one thing I haven't really seen anybody do.
Yeah, the other thing where it gets challenging too is shipping, because
Yeah, because you're gonna have to pay shipping, and it could change over the course of development.
yeah, and that I'm assuming Boom gets much better ship rates than I do.
No doubt.
That's really, shipping is a big. It's a big.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the biggest cost. One of the big costs in the campaign is shipping.
Yeah, that's where Amazon's able to undercut everybody so much. It's not the price of the product itself; it's
shipping,
the contracts they have on shipping that makes it impossible for people to compete.
Right, and now that they have I think like they have, they do. They have their own fleet and their own trucks, so it's it's to them it's just the cost of doing business. They've cut their post office out for pretty much. So if we can get an army of comic book fans to deliver our books for us, then
then it would be more reasonable.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, I guess like I don't know what is your goal for Monster Matador? Like, what do you want this to mean to people?
I just want people to have a good time. I want people to have fun with it. To have a book that surprises them. I hope they like the character, that they can get into the character. It's a weird book to sell because, you know, typically if you go, well, if you don't like Godzilla, you think, well, maybe I won't like Monster Matador, but it's not really. Even though it's a monster book, it's a little different than those types of books. I think a lot of the reaction I get from it is oh, this wasn't like what I thought it was going to be. People are sort of pleasantly surprised by it. So
yeah.
But ultimately, you know, we do this stuff because we want to entertain people, and as long as people are entertained. You know.
Well, I mean, I know you've been doing this for quite a while, you know, but it seems very like finger on the pulse, you know, because we saw like right now, just in comics alone, Big Girls just ended. We have Kaiju Score is out. That's very Kaiju centric.
Yeah.
And there's another big Ultra Mega just came out last week.
Yeah,
that's kind of a
yeah,
you know, and then like Kong and Godzilla as far as movies is, you know, so there's something going on with like kaiju and monster stuff in general.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's funny. It's one of those things where it's just your timing happens to be, you know, things happen when they happen, and it's, you know, maybe there's something in the air or whatever. Because Monster Matter, I came up with so long ago, and it, you know, I kind of done different things with it, but I hadn't really, you know, hadn't really pushed it. And then you know, when we launched with Fabio, with, you know, with that book last year, now suddenly it's like there's been like kind of a kaiju renaissance, I think. So
yeah,
everybody's copying me, right?
yeah, of course. Yeah, and then I mean, again, kind of finger on the pulse, you were talking about like the novella style, like 60, 80 page type of thing. Like that's where I see a lot of the industry headed, you know?
Yeah, I just I see it too. It's strange to me that it hasn't happened yet. I love single issues, but like economically and just from like they're just becoming harder and harder to do because of the cost, you know.
Well, I mean, I find even from like a consumer standpoint, like I said, it's so hard to remember month to month what's going on sometimes. Like when you get like these novellas and you get these collections, like trade paperback is a much better read than a floppy.
And that's what
you know
do. So
yeah.
You know, I'm pretty much exclusively to trade, you know, unless like if a friend's putting out a book, I'll read the floppies, you know.
Yeah.
Support them, but otherwise, yeah, I just and it's just time, you know. I just don't have the time to it's just easier to sit down and read like a story than, because like you said, like I'll read an issue and then I'll forget for 3 months, and then I'll forget what happened in that issue, and I've got to go back and read the issue again, and because I feel like I've read the same comic like 5 times before I even like get to the next one. But yeah, it just makes, to me, it just makes more sense, and like with everything, you know, people just, we have so many more things kind of sucking up our time too, that I feel like comics sometimes just gets lost in that when you're doing single issues. And a lot of people too they'll buy the single issues, but like you said, you know, they'll keep them till they have you know, whatever the first story is, and then read them all at once. So it's really no different.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, they say, you know, like YouTube and these social media companies, you know, like that's really what they're dealing in is attention. And there's just, based on how much content is coming out of everything anymore, there's just not enough attention. And so that really is what the market is. It's not, content isn't necessarily king anymore, other than if it's getting you the most attention, you know. It doesn't matter how much you have, it matters how attentive people are to what you're doing.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of, it's the same thing with, the, binging on Netflix or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's that model of like people, because there's so much content and people are interested in so many different things. They kind of want to, they want to focus, they want to get it done, and then they want to move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty rare, I mean, obviously things like Disney's been successful doing it week by week, with like
Yeah.
the Marvel stuff and Mandalorian, but for the most part, um, not there aren't too many shows or companies that could necessarily get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big difference in their models. Everybody, we really like when HBO was doing Game of Thrones and everybody was watching it week after week, and it was like the water cooler thing. And then Disney came along and kind of picked up that model with their stuff now, and they're having the conversations and all
yeah,
that. And everybody kind of feels like maybe Netflix should switch to that model too. And I think Netflix does shows that are really like story driven and character driven,
yeah,
and the way that they drop things, I think that more people actually complete it than do some of these other shows because they drop off week after week. Your viewership, just like your floppies, each one you lose a couple people here and there. And
right,
so I think for Netflix, because they're doing like these complete stories each season, I think that works best for them to just drop it all at once, because people will sit down in a weekend and watch the whole thing. But
yeah,
if you had to tune into Netflix once a week or whatever to watch it, people would fall off. They wouldn't finish any of these movies and
yeah.
series.
No, it's true, and there are also different types of content. With things like Game of Thrones and Star Wars, there's like this built-in, mythology that
Mm-hmm. It's so expansive.
that's so expansive, and it's part of the whatever the experience or whatever is to take the time to kind of analyze it and pick it apart and study it and theorize it. But that's part of the for a lot of people, that's part of the experience of it.
Yeah.
Whereas for most shows, it's you're not going to sit there and pick apart I don't know, whatever random
No,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
it's kind of like a lot of comics have went to a more decompressed storytelling, like the Turtles. The
yeah,
Turtles, the IDW run, it's written in like these 4-issue arcs.
mhm,
And so when you pick up a trade, like it's so perfect. You're in, you're through the story, and then you're out,
right.
and then you can go talk about the whole story. Whereas like week to week, I don't feel like that thing kind of really drives the same conversation.
Yeah,
So I think that's like how the shows kind of are too. Like Netflix is doing something like that, where each season is like very decompressed, and it's really more about the whole season of that show versus, like Game of Thrones, where it's really about every episode and what's going on in the world beyond it.
right. And the character, like this characters and the background characters, and you know,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very different style. It's interesting though that there's so many different ways to be successful in the market, whether
yeah,
video or comics or whatever else. It's the options are more expansive than ever.
yeah, absolutely, and that's great. I mean, it's the
Mm-hmm.
variety is great. Um, but yeah, I was thinking about it the other day, just how much like I used to watch everything. You know what I mean? Like every movie and now I'm like, I mean, I have kids too, but now I'm like, I'm lucky if I watch like, a quarter of I have to be like very, uh,
Yeah.
I used to just love watching like every movie that came out and watch it. But
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, there's just so much content.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to go to the movies like all the time,
Yeah.
and I would watch, everything that was dropping was worth watching,
Right.
and not that it isn't. Like I'm fully aware that I'm missing like really great
Yeah.
content,
There's
but
so much good stuff now. Like it's
yeah.
impossible to watch everything that's like
Yeah.
good.
Like WandaVision and now Falcon and Winter Soldier, that's kind of manageable. I usually watch it like in the evening after everybody
Right.
else goes to sleep.
Yeah.
The Justice League, the Snyder cut, I really had to figure a way out. I ended up staying up like that whole night because I was like, there's no other time I'm gonna have 4 hours And
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
ended up staying up like the whole night to watch it because I just didn't know when I would like get away from the kids and everything long enough to watch a 4-hour movie ever
yeah,
again, you know?
yeah. I've only gotten 40 minutes into it. So I got and I hate the thing too is I hate, especially for something like that where I feel like you've got to kind of like immerse yourself in it. You know, you kind
Hmm.
of have to. It, it's really something that you just got to kind of sit and watch. You know.
Yeah.
So I like that. I try to find the time, but it's hard to find a 4 hour
Yeah, it's such a huge block of
four
time.
hour block to just
You
sit.
don't even realize like how much 4 hours is until it's like I can't do anything except for watch this movie, and
Yeah,
suddenly it's like all these things I have to do though.
yeah. You're just sitting there and you're like,
Yeah, yeah. It's a unique watch though. It's definitely unexpected and different.
yeah. I'm curious, but and then the problem is now I'm probably going to go back and sit down and be like, well, I'm going to have to start from the beginning again because it probably just it's been since like Saturday, so I've already
Oh
forgotten.
yeah, yeah. It's really dense too. There is
Yeah,
so much going on in that movie. Like
yeah. That's
I
what I mean.
watched it. I watched it that night when it came out, and I pretty much did like the 4 hours straight, and that like gave me a really good foundation. And then since then, like whenever I have time, I'll throw it on because it's like divided up, you know. And so I'll
Right.
like try to sit down and watch one of those. It's probably roughly like 45 minutes per chapter or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'll watch one of those every now and then. And since I've already seen it, like it's really easy to kind of build and then memorize at that point.
right. Yeah, I watched. I think it was the first chapter I got through.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool though. It's a cool movie.
Yeah,
It's not without its flaws, but I mean, I think it's exactly what everybody expected. Like, you know, to themselves. You know, like if you're a big fan and you were going in expecting all this crazy stuff, like it delivers. And then if you're not really that interested in it, it pretty much gives you what you expect. You know, like it's a very subjective experience.
right, right.
Have you watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
Yeah, I haven't watched it.
No. I put that one on, and I need to rewatch it because, like, I just kind of put it on in the background, you know. And I had heard so many negative things, but I didn't
Oh,
catch
really?
anything that really like knocked me off, you know. I was like, no, it seems about accurate for a
Yeah,
Marvel thing, you know.
yeah. I mean, I like those characters in the movie, so I'm kind of curious to see where it goes. Uh,
Yeah,
but yeah, I haven't. My wife actually wants to watch it, so now it's the problem is when my wife wants to watch something. So now I gotta, like when she has, when she's like wants to.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's the worst. Wherever you get like tangled
So
up
like I
and
just
like,
put it
don't
on
watch this without me.
because usually what I'll do is if it's a night where she's putting the kids to bed, I'll just watch it, but I'll have to wait. So
That's awesome. Well, do you have anything else you're working on that anybody should know about? Anything to look for?
right now focusing on Monster Matador, the Kickstarter, April 5th to May 6th, and Fabio and I are developing another book, like a horror kind of anthology, and I've got a couple other books, but I kind of right now like one of the things I've had to learn and is just kind of focusing on one thing right now,
Yeah,
and making it the best we can do it. But yeah, so right now it's Monster Matador. It's my thing.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
And you said it was April 5th?
April 5th. Yeah.
Okay, so it goes live April 5th. Do you have social media for Monster Matador
Yes.
itself, or does it just go through you? Or
You can follow me on Twitter. It's Monster Matador. Instagram is Monster Matador. What's the other one? Facebook is Monster Matador. And you can follow me. You can follow me too on Twitter. It's the Stephen Prince, and Facebook it's Stephen Prince. I'm not that interesting on Facebook, but
no, that's
I,
awesome, man.
I pretty much post the same thing that I do on
Hmm.
Monster Matador. But yeah, it's just look up Monster Matador.
That's cool. You got the corner market,
I know, right?
the market cornered on that name.
You know, I signed up for that Twitter like 10 years ago, and I actually bought the website like 10 years ago. But, you know, I'm like, you know, I'm kind of like, if I don't do it now, someone's gonna end up doing it, you know. And I remember one time I got a Twitter email from them because I hadn't really tweeted anything or done anything because I wasn't doing the book yet, and I got an email from them telling me that if I didn't tweet something or whatever, then they were gonna close the account. And I was like, can't lose.
Wow, really?
I can't lose Monster Matador. I can't lose the name because it's
right.
so hard. It's so hard. I can't even get like StephenPrince.com, you know. I can't even get TheStephenPrince.com. It's like Stephen Prince 565 GH whatever, you know. They give you like it's like I always wonder like what are our kids kids like, you know. You're not even gonna be able to use your name or anything. Everyone's gonna have like all these made up like future names and future like monikers and stuff, because and even like names for anything is all gonna be, everything's gonna be taken.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's why, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm happy with my name and my branding and stuff, but it's just unique enough that no matter where I go, like, it's never been taken. I'm like, I'm just gonna stick with this because it's unique enough anybody can find me.
Yeah, but that's kind of like the positive thing. I've noticed a lot of the like newer podcasts like yours and stuff, the names are really unique and memorable because you kind of have to be, you know. It's like you're like, wait a minute, where did this come from? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, you got to get creative, you know. It's crazy out there. Yeah, eventually we're gonna run out of names and stuff. Everything's just gonna have a bunch of X's and stuff in it. So good thing we got in early.
Yeah, we're in the golden age now.
So on your Kickstarter, what's the best value? What do you think people should be looking for? And also, do you have like catch-up tiers and stuff, or?
Yes. So the great thing is we have catch-up tiers. You could get issue 1 through 3, and those are great value. We have original art from Fabio. Fabio draws the book digitally, but he's done 5 original art drawings for us. We have a very cool glow-in-the-dark print that was printed by Nakatomi Print Labs. We have a lot of we have some variant covers by some really cool artists, and then every tier comes with trading cards. And one of the things I like to do is we start the funding goal low, and I like to do the stretch goals. And usually what we end up doing is like rather than make the tiers more expensive, you know, we'll kind of throw in the prints and stickers and stuff like that as kind of freebies as the campaign goes on. And then we have add-ons. Kickstarter lets you do add-ons. We actually have a Monster Matador theme song, which is a very cool. If you watch the Kickstarter video, you'll hear it in there. It's called Flame Fire, and it's performed by a band called Metal Angels. That is a real, not real band. My friend Barry Neely composed it, and I wrote the lyrics, and it's got a kind of late 80s, 90s hard metal.
Oh, cool!
It's actually it's like it's a surprisingly like good song. Like it's a song like you'd hear it on the radio, and you'd be like, oh yeah, you know, it's cool. It's like I'm really, really proud of it.
Wow, that's cool. I need to go check that out too then.
Yeah. So there's a lot, and yeah, you could do. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, I mean, we keep it pretty simple. I don't go too crazy with like this, like the extra stuff, because ultimately people are there for the comic, you know.
Yeah.
So we try to keep it focused on the comic, and then there's, you know, we do we have like you know, sketch cards and things like that. And what I'm trying this time around is I'm putting stuff in the add-on section. So rather than kind of forcing people to buy a really expensive tier. You can just kind of add it if it's something you like. So
I like that approach, because that is one thing that I don't want to say sucks about Kickstarters, but one of the more annoying things is like sometimes they'll have like one thing that I really like, but the tier to get it's like a huge jump, and it's like, man, I wish there was like just like a base price to get in, and then just like add on whatever like really cool stuff you want, you know?
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's also like you might want like this one thing, but then the cover that it comes with or whatever isn't the cover you want. So it's just a way to kind of like simplify.
More a la carte kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. So April the 5th, Monster Matador on Kickstarter. It's exciting.